Hello, my name's Marky, and welcome back to some more stories from Reddit. Let's go. Am I the asshole for defending my daughter's choice to turn down a boy's advances? Hello all, my husband and I have been arguing about this all day, and I need some outside perspective. My husband picked my daughter Cindy up from school, and he saw her speaking to a schoolmate that she had previously had a crush on. For context, last year during a sleepover, my husband and I overheard Cindy's friends lightly teasing her over having a crush on this boy. My husband also gently teased her with some innocent jokes, like, Cindy and boy sitting on a tree, KISSING, type of silliness, and he sometimes brings it up randomly to tease her, like asking her if she wants to invite her boyfriend when we go on family outings. She never actually dated him or is even friends with him as far as I know. Her dad just likes to tease her. Anyways, apparently over the summer the boy was injured in an accident and he missed the first couple of weeks of school as a result. When my husband was picking her up, he saw them talking and noticed the boy had significant scarring on his face and hand. When he asked her what happened to him and what they were talking about, saying that the boy looked disappointed, she explained to him about his accident and that he was just asking her out on a date, but that she turned him down. My husband was furious and scolded her for being so shallow as to reject him because his appearance had changed. Cindy was crying when she got home. She told me all of this and insisted that she was polite when turning him down and was just not interested in him romantically anymore. I told my husband to apologize to my daughter, and that he never should have made her feel bad for turning down anyone's romantic advances. I told him that our daughter is old enough to decide who she is attracted to, and it would be cruel for her to have to say yes out of pity, thus leading him on. My husband is now saying that he sees me differently, and that I should be ashamed of teaching Cindy to be a shallow monster and ableist. He's also angry that I undermined him when he was scolding our daughter and says that we should not undermine each other's authority when disciplining our child. I was not doing it to undermine him. I just think it's not healthy to make our daughter feel guilty and shamed for not being interested in someone. I do feel bad for the boy, but I don't think it's anyone's place, neither mine nor my husband's, to tell Cindy that she has to date someone or she's a bad person. Am I the asshole? Yeah, I don't think it's your place to tell Cindy she has to date someone or that she's a bad person. I feel like Cindy has figured that out for herself here. I try to be sympathetic of the husband in this situation and see where he's coming from and why he sees OP differently now and that she should be ashamed for teaching Cindy to be a shallow monster and ableist. Cindy can date whoever the hell she wants. Cindy has free choice in whatever she wants to do in her life, and I don't think that he should be guilt-tripping Cindy into doing something she doesn't want to do under the guise of being ableist. I think the husband is reaching here, not the asshole OP. Nerdy Swamp Witch 40 says, not the asshole. Just because Cindy may or may not have had a crush on this boy last year doesn't mean that she always would, especially after not being around him all summer. Your husband made a massive leap in assuming the only reason Cindy isn't interested anymore is the boy's scarring. He didn't talk to her. He jumped on her and pushed an unfortunate narrative that Cindy owed this boy her attention, but she does not. You need to point out to your husband that what is ableist is insisting that Cindy date a boy purely because he now has scarring and that she can't turn him down because he deserves it to make up for what happened to him. That's a gross way to look at disability. If he has concerns about Cindy judging only on appearances, he could have had a calm and reasoned conversation with her. But he chose not to, and that's on him. And I'm also wondering if his constant teasing contributed to her loss of interest in the guy. My dad did this to me too, and so I tended to drop crushes before it felt like he was shaming me for liking someone. Plus, I knew that if I actually ended up dating said crush, the teasing would only get worse. In the end, I stopped telling my parents about my crushes because I just couldn't deal with the incessant teasing. That shit hurts your self-esteem. That he literally said punish her because she made a choice for herself is wild. Should she say yes to anybody no matter what so they don't feel rejected? He is so out of line that I'm gobsmacked. Girls need to learn that they're allowed to say no to anyone for any reason. Oh my god, I can't. OP comes back to the post with an edit and says, wow, I didn't anticipate this getting so many responses when I wrote it last night before bed. I'm trying to read through all the replies so that I can approach this with my husband again later today. I'm also going to have a talk privately with Cindy about the situation. Thank you so much for all of the responses. I feel more confident now in my choice to defend Cindy. My husband's not a bad guy. He didn't tease Cindy to hurt her. It was to be playful, and Cindy didn't seem bothered by it. She would usually brush him off when he made those jokes. I think my husband was short-sighted when it came to this situation, but he's not a bad father, and he really loves me and his daughter, even if he makes mistakes sometimes. Following up the edit, OP comes back with an update and says, "Hi everyone. I got a lot of responses yesterday, and I thought I should update on what happened since I posted. I wanted to address some things first that I saw in the replies. Many comments were either implying or outright saying that if my daughter's reason for turning down the boy, I'll call him Sam for this post, were primarily because of the change in appearance after his accident, that would mean that my husband was right and she was a shallow monster and I was enabling her. This didn't sit right with me and hurt me to hear. But people also pointed out that if the roles were reversed, and it was my daughter whose appearance had changed, and was then rejected by a boy, then I would probably be livid at this boy, right? These comments stuck with me and really made me think more deeply about this whole situation, and I'm really glad that I was asked these things, because it made me realize what lessons I wanted my daughter to get from this situation. I realized that although I would be upset if this happened to my daughter, I wouldn't be upset at someone for rejecting her so long as they treat her with respect and dignity. I would be upset at the unfair situation she was in, but I would never expect some random person to make it their mission to rectify this injustice at the expense of their own autonomy. I would instead comfort my daughter and explain to her that people are like puzzle pieces. Not all of them fit together, and that just because a boy she liked wasn't her puzzle piece does not make her any less valuable or beautiful, and one day she might find someone who does fit well with her. The lesson I wanted my daughter to learn from this was that she was not shallow for rejecting someone romantically, regardless of the reason, even if it was physical. That everyone is owed human decency and respect, but not romantic affection. Denying someone equal respect and dignity because of their appearance would be shallow, but she didn't do that. Her romantic affection is not a commodity to be distributed. It belonged to her, and she is not obligated to be fair when it comes to who she wants to share it with. It belonged to her alone, and is a privilege that she gets to bestow on someone that she likes and who treats her well. A lot of the comments really made me realize how important it is for Cindy to feel like her consent matters, because what could start with just going on a date that she doesn't want to go on could one day escalate into her being pressured or coerced into dangerous and traumatizing situations or abusive relationships. Thank you so much to the commenters who shared their stories, which helped me realize how important this was. Some people claimed that I would likely leave my husband if his appearance changed, but I'm sorry to disappoint you guys because I would never do such a thing. I love my husband so much, my relationship with him is stronger than just dating or a crush. We built a life together, and his appearance changing would not change that. We've been married for long enough that my attraction to him and love for him now go far deeper than looks. Maybe it would be a different story if we were just dating and barely knew each other, but things change once you make vows to each other to stick together in sickness or health. Many people are claiming that my husband is a monster and is abusive, and it may seem that way if all you know about him is this one situation, but he is a full human being. He does more for this family every day than I could ever express in one post. He has issues with anger, in that he often says things he regrets during, but when he cools off, he is always open to listening and communication. I know now how damaging his teasing of Cindy about Sam was last year, and I'll make sure that that doesn't happen again. But I assure all of you that this is something that he has done out of ignorance and not malice. He loves Cindy to bits and would never intentionally do something to harm her. Okay, so on to what happened yesterday. My husband woke up and left the house early, so I didn't get a chance to talk to him. When Cindy woke up, I made sure that she was okay and told her that I wanted to talk to her about what happened the day before. Her friend's mum gave her a ride home, and she got here before my husband did, so we were able to have a heart-to-heart. I told her that she doesn't need to explain to me or anyone why she changed her mind about Sam. And I explained to her all of the things that I mentioned above, that Sam was going through something very hard, and she should be kind to him, but she doesn't owe him a date if she's not interested in him romantically, that she isn't shallow, and she should never feel pressure to do something with someone that she doesn't want to do, and that her dad was upset and said things that he didn't mean. Even so, he still loves her, and so do I. She was starting to cry, so I held her for a while. She told me she was upset more than anything that her dad thinks of her as a bad person. This broke my heart, and so I told her that I would talk to Dad about this when he gets home. When my husband got home, I told him that we needed to talk about yesterday. He didn't want to at first, but I insisted and told him that it was about Cindy's well-being, as she was still upset about it, and even thinks that her own father thinks that she is a bad person. This upset him, and he said of course he didn't think that. I basically explained to him my thoughts above, and although he was a bit resistant at first and insisted he just didn't want Cindy to become a shallow person, he really listened when I explained to him how people might take advantage of her in the future if she starts to feel like her consent and her desire don't matter. I didn't show him the post I made, but I wrote down some of the comments and stories and told them to him. I told him that there were stories that I found on Reddit from people who experienced something similar. I didn't show him my post because so many comments were unfairly painting him as a monster, and I was worried that it would make him defensive. I think it broke through to him because he was really upset at the thought of our daughter one day being manipulated into staying with someone who was hurting her. He went to talk to her privately in her room while I prepared dinner, and afterwards, she seemed a lot happier and was joking around with her dad again. Today, we're both planning to go bowling together as well. Thank you everyone for the advice, the stories, and for motivating me to stick to my decision to defend Cindy. You guys are awesome. Unpopular Kryptonite says, really good job explaining your stance, OP. Every man reading this should take a printout of this for them to refer to when they're asked why they said no to dating a single mom, or an overweight woman, or a woman of a certain ethnicity or race. She's not my type, I am not ready right now. Non-committal, polite-sounding statements that don't really say much about your reason for rejecting her. Trin42 says, not gonna lie, I had mixed feelings about your post, OP. I saw both sides and reversed the situation as well, and I felt for you. There were so many things that you never considered, so I'm really glad you absorbed what this sub was trying to tell you. I did think your husband was the asshole for his response and words to your daughter, so I'm relieved you two were able to have a conversation to hash it out. That's a great marriage. Yes, he was still mad, but he listened and realized he wasn't righteous. My cat posts for me says, your husband called your daughter a shallow monster and said that he would never look at her or you the same way again. And he did this for, checks notes, turning down a date with a boy that she hadn't seen for months. Your husband needs help. Your daughter probably does too now. Those are the kinds of words that stay with a person forever. And Siren 2040 says, unfortunately, whether you want to recognize it or not, the fact that your husband's immediate response to your daughter turning down a date with a boy was to call her a monster, call her horrible, and tell her that he never wants to see her again is indicative of abusive behavior. That doesn't mean that your husband is ultimately abusive, but that he displays some abusive traits that need to either be worked on now, or you need to get out of the house before they turn even more abusive. No father who genuinely loves and cares about his child would sit there and call her a monster because she turned down a date with a boy. No father who has respect for his child would do that. No father who wants to be involved in his child's life would say that. Your husband needs to get into some serious anger management classes, or some therapy to work through whatever it is that causes him to explode and say things he regrets. Because it's not just going to stop at words. It never does. And that reminds me a lot of a little motivational photo that I saw recently. It's a photo of a dog jumping off of a cliff to bite onto an eagle midair, and it says, "Choices made in anger cannot be undone." It's great you can have a conversation and hash it out, yes, but I agree with that commenter. More work needs to be done with your husband, because I foresee grim tidings in the future. What's your take though, guys? I want to know what you guys have to think about this one down in the comments below. I think it's time for the next story. Our next story is by user Sandwormussi, titled, "Am I the asshole here for taking my sister's phone away after she called me a pedo at her school? I, 27 male, am the guardian of my younger sister, 13 female, and I work for the USPS. Lately, I've been on a route that delivers mail to the local middle school and high school, and she happens to go there. Today, I was at the middle school walking to the main office with the mail, and then suddenly I heard, 'Back away, pedo!' And I got really startled and looked, and it's my younger sister with her friend. She was laughing, and I told her that wasn't funny, and a nearby teacher came over firmly asking what was happening. I frantically explained that I was delivering the mail, and she was my younger sister who was making a tasteless joke, and my sister was just standing there enjoying the situation. Fortunately, the teacher heard me and just told my sister and her friend to get back to class. Before she left, I said, "Hey," and she looked and I sternly said, "Give me your phone," and she stopped for a moment and said, "What?" And I told her to give me her phone. She protested at first, but I persisted, and she gave me her phone and seemingly was really upset and annoyed as she walked away. I got home this afternoon, and she was effing pissed at me. Finally, I got to have a conversation with her about it, and I told her that her behavior was completely inappropriate and unacceptable because she easily could have made me lose my job, which is putting food in our mouths and clothes on our backs and a roof above our head, just because she wanted a quick giggle. She continued to persist and pulled the, "Who do you think you are, my parent?" And I said, "I think I'm the person who pays for your cell phone bill and can easily cancel that phone plan anytime they want." She just walked away, and I asked if she was going to eat dinner or should I put it away, and she flipped me off and went upstairs. To which I called out, "Yeah, okay, I'm keeping your phone another day." My sister is a big ray of hope in my sea of depression and stress, and the most important thing in my life, and the reason for trudging through this shit job. But holy shit, she can be such a brat sometimes. I'm wondering if maybe I overreacted by taking her phone. Maybe this is a completely separate thing, but sometimes it just feels so weird punishing her. Like, I feel like I'm the one supposed to help her get out of parental punishments, rather than the one asserting them. Am I the asshole here? Actual Clue says, "Not the asshole. Accusations like that are serious. You can get fired or investigated over that. Maybe have a conversation with your sister and tell her she could get taken away if someone hears her say something like that and reports it or tells their parents." Pitch Far 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 says, "In the future, this can cause more severe problems and she has to know about that." Cam 49ers Forever says, "Not the asshole. What you didn't tell your sister, and you should, is that her little stunt could get her taken away and put into foster care. If that teacher reports the incident to CPS, they can, and frequently do, immediately remove the minor while they investigate. Unfortunately, CPS is awfully slow to respond to a younger child's neglect, but when a young teenager claims sexual abuse, they tend to act swiftly. And her telling them at that point that it was a joke won't matter, because actual victims frequently recant because of fear. Your sister is plenty old enough to know this." I agree. Not the asshole for taking her phone away. She should understand the seriousness of what she did. She needs to realize that her actions have real consequences, and it could have been a lot more serious than just a punishment from UOP. She's just being a typical edgy teenager in this situation, and yeah, it's so funny to yell pedo, 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 until you take the joke way too far and you're getting dragged away by CPS for your own safety. This is definitely a mess around and find out situation for the sister, and OP, you're doing your best to prevent that from happening by punishing her and trying to get her to see where you're coming from and see where this is going to go if she doesn't stop. I really don't know what else you could have done in this situation, and I agree with what you've done so far, so not the asshole. Now, OP comes back with an update and says, "So, stuff has happened. First of all, quick update. I delivered mail at her school yesterday and saw the teacher who was involved in this situation and anxiously asked her if anything was going to come of it. She said she admittedly did have a little talk with her after, and based on what my sister said and what she saw of the situation firsthand, she didn't see a need to report it. But she did say that if my sister keeps saying stuff like that, she would feel compelled to report it. I almost dropped to my knees thanking her. So I've been thinking of the whole situation for the past 2 days, and have been soul-searching or whatever, and decided that I'd talk to her again. Now, I worked really late this afternoon, and had a pretty draining, upsetting, and really hard and heavy day. I got home rather late, but my sister actually stayed up to wait for me and said she wanted to talk to me. She asked if we could sit down, and then she told me she was really sorry for saying what she did, and she didn't mean to embarrass me or get me fired or anything, and said she was out of line for flipping me off, and told me she was sorry for that too. And then she told me that she loved me. So I had some stuff that I was trying to figure out how to articulate, but she initiated the conversation, so I just threw out what I had, even though it was undercooked. I told her that I appreciate the apology, but she clearly doesn't understand how serious her joke was. I told her that little joke seriously could have ruined both of our lives, since if the wrong person had heard, Child Protective Services would have put her into foster care and forced her to live in some rundown place with potentially dangerous people she's never met, and she would be doing so all alone without me. And I'd potentially be facing legal action and without a job, all because she wanted a little giggle. Then I said I really hadn't appreciated her attitude as of late and the way that she's been talking to me, and I said some of her behavior is completely inappropriate. I used the flipping me off and making that joke as examples. And while I always will be her big brother, I'm also her parent right now. So I told her that I'm going to limit her screen time and internet time. And to start, I made the decision I'm going to be giving her a flip phone. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where all hell broke loose. She just blankly stared at me for a second and said, "What?" and was asking if I was joking and why I would do that. I did my best to stay firm and just said, "I'm sorry, but that's what's gonna happen." And she was begging me and profusely apologizing for her attitude, and she asked why I was giving such a harsh punishment for her stupid joke. She actually started crying, and I felt horrible and wanted to tell her, "Actually, I'll think about it." And I felt like such an asshole for not saying that. But then once she realized I was firm, she switched planes and went into offensive mode. She started pinballing between points as to why I can't do this. I'm being controlling, malicious, self-centered, and other things. And she also made some cheap and unsavory comments relating to the fact that I recently received an autism diagnosis and questioning the effect that has on my decision-making skills. Oh wow, she pulled no punches, Jesus Christ. Straight to the bin with this one. I think that was the one time I lost my cool in that conversation because I just said, ableism, nice. And she said something ridiculous like, "Is it ableism if you're actually being stupid?" Oh shit! And I nodded and said, "A well thought out rebuttal." Some more shit was said, but it ended with her literally screaming and saying that I was being unreasonable and that she hates me before going upstairs. That went about as I expected. I'm just really happy she didn't tell me she wished I was dead again or that she wished she didn't live with me. Pretty low bar, but I was anticipating that. I can live with, "I hate you." I don't really have much to say except, God, I can't wait until I go back to being her brother instead of her parent. So that's the update. A bunch of numbers says, quote, "She asked why I was giving such a harsh punishment for a stupid joke." She didn't stay up to apologize, she stayed up to get her phone back. You're doing the right thing. If she doesn't realize the seriousness of her accusation, because that's what it was, not a joke, then she will do it again and ruin someone's life. All good parents hear that their teenagers hate them at one point or another. You should look into what resources are available to you. She would benefit from a neutral, trustworthy adult to hear this from and to talk about how to appropriately handle feelings that accompany such big changes in her life. Kazbrecker is my love says, she probably only really apologized to get her phone back and it didn't go the way that she hoped. Her joke could have seriously hurt you and herself, and it's not even funny. Now she's being offensive because you're not giving her what she wants. Hopefully she actually realizes the shit she says, but it seems like she won't until she faces a more serious consequence. You're doing what you can, and the fact that you even stepped up to parent her is amazing, and I'm so sorry she doesn't appreciate you the way she should. OP replies, I don't think there wasn't any sincerity to her apology, but I certainly do think she had some kind of expectation to at least get an idea of when she'd have her phone back. I probably caught her off guard with that, which is why she reacted so strongly, but my biggest takeaway from all of this is just how much of an impact the idea of not having a smartphone had on her. I don't mean to be a "you kids these days" boomer, but dude, I would have been ecstatic to get a flip phone at 13. Additionally, I think she did understand what she said was dangerous. When I was telling her about how she could have ended up in foster care all alone and without me, she had this look on her face of, oh shit, I messed up. Synesthesia replies, and yet her behavior reverted pretty much immediately. So as a lesson, it didn't really stick. OP replies, maybe I'm being too generous here, but I'm willing to believe that she was just caught off guard and reacted. I'm gonna have a talk with her tonight or tomorrow once we both calm down to discuss the logistics of her having a flip phone and when she'll get the smartphone back. I guess we'll see then. Fair enough with that one, OP. She could have just been caught off guard and reacted. If that is your take on the situation, and because you know her better, then I believe you, and I'm gonna say she reacted out of ignorance and not malice. I really do hope that you can continue to drill into her head the fact that she is going to get taken away if she doesn't learn her lesson from this. And I really hope she doesn't have to learn her lesson the hard way, as many people do. Also, flip phones are sick. We need to bring them back because smartphones are destroying society. There, I said it. Anyway, I'd love to know what you guys have to think about this one down in the comments below. Let me know if you have a flip phone. Alright, and now it's time for our next story by a deleted user, titled, "Am I the asshole for not inviting my sister to my wedding because of her husband?" So I, 29 female, am getting married in a few months, and I decided not to invite my older sister Emily, 32 female. Before you judge, here is why. Emily's husband Jake is a nightmare. He's rude, makes inappropriate jokes, and always tries to dominate every conversation. At family gatherings, he interrupts people, brags about his job, and even talks down to my fiancé Mike, 30 male. The last straw was at our engagement party a few months ago. Jake got drunk and made a speech, uninvited of course, where he joked about how I finally found someone who could put up with me. Everyone was uncomfortable, and Mike was furious, but we let it go to keep the peace. Fast forward to wedding planning, and Mike and I agreed that we didn't want Jake ruining our big day. I called Emily and explained that while we love her, we didn't want Jake there because of his behavior. I even offered to have a separate celebration with her after the wedding, but she was livid. She said I was forcing her to choose between me and her husband, and that it was cruel to exclude her because of him. Now my parents are upset too, saying that I'm tearing the family apart, but I don't think I'm in the wrong for not wanting someone who disrespects me and my fiancé at our wedding. Am I the asshole? Look, with situations like this, it's always gonna be your wedding, your choice. That is above all. I don't care what your parents have to say. I don't care what Emily has to say. If someone disrespects you and you don't want them at your wedding, that's it. Open shut case right there. You're not an asshole for that. Other people don't get to dictate your wedding. Gothic Labyrinth says, not the asshole. You're not tearing the family apart. Jake is. And honestly, if your parents are going to choose his side over their daughters, then they're not doing a great job of keeping the family together either. Miss Moonlight Love says, it's your wedding day, and you have every right to decide who attends. You've given your sister an alternative option to celebrate, so it's not like you're excluding her completely. Your sister's husband has shown clear disrespect, and it makes sense that you wouldn't want someone who makes everyone uncomfortable to be part of such a special day. Your sister is understandably upset, but that's more about her choosing to defend her husband's poor behavior rather than acknowledging your feelings. You are not tearing the family apart, you're simply standing up for yourself and setting boundaries. And Fun Eliana says, you're in a really tough situation, and it's clear you have valid reasons for wanting to exclude Jake from your wedding. Your feelings about his behavior, especially at such an important event, are completely understandable. It's your wedding day, and you want it to be a positive experience for you and your fiancé. So OP comes back with an update and says, thank you so much for all of your advice. After reading through the comments, I decided to talk to Emily one more time before making any final decisions. I wanted to explain how deeply Jake's behavior had affected me and Mike, and why it was important to have a wedding where we felt respected and comfortable. We met for dinner, and I laid it all out. How Jake's behavior at the engagement party crossed the line, and how it wasn't just about one incident, but a pattern of disrespect. I told her I loved her, but I didn't feel like I could allow Jake to be at the wedding. I also made it clear that I didn't want to lose her as a sister, and I hoped she would understand why we felt this way. To my surprise, Emily was really receptive. She said she had been feeling conflicted about Jake's behavior too, and that it was hard for her to admit that he was wrong. She apologized for not seeing things from my perspective sooner. Emily actually said that while she still loves Jake, she's noticed that his attitude has been causing problems in their marriage and with other family members too. But the biggest shock? She offered to talk to Jake herself. She said she didn't want to miss my wedding over his behavior and would explain to him why it was best that he not attend. I was honestly relieved, but also worried about how that conversation would go. A few days later, Emily called me and said that she talked to Jake. Apparently, he was upset at first, but eventually agreed to not come to the wedding. Emily told him that it was about maintaining family peace and supporting me on my big day. She reassured him that this wasn't a permanent ban from family events, just a decision to keep the wedding atmosphere positive. Jake wasn't thrilled, but he agreed to stay home. Emily will be attending the wedding on her own, and while things are still a bit tense between her and Jake, I'm grateful that she chose to support me. We're in such a better place now, and she's even helping me with some last-minute wedding prep. As for Jake, I'm hoping that this situation might be a wake-up call for him. But for now, I'm just happy that my sister will be there on my special day. Aridomus says, he agreed to stay home. Bitch, you ain't agreed to shit, you ain't invited. But I'm glad your sister is doing the right thing. Cthulhu LaRue says, I'm glad it sounds like it's resolved with your sister, but you should hire security in case dude decides to crash your wedding and he's just lying low right now. Or make sure your bridal party is ready to yeet his ass out. And Cinema Freak says, security or 5 of your biggest cousins, because I would not trust him not to show up. At the end of the day, I'm very glad that Emily is actually on your side in this one and doesn't just scream abuse at you like we so often see in these stories. Like everyone else here, I don't trust that Jake is going to keep his word and stay away from the wedding. Like, yes, I agree. I hope this situation should be a wake-up call for him, but we've seen people like him before. I don't think it's gonna be. I think he's gonna continue pushing your boundaries. You ain't agreed to shit, Jake. You ain't invited. All you're saying is, okay, I'm telling you that I'm not gonna wedding crash. Good, I hope you stay home, Jake. Anyway, I'd love to know what you guys would do to Jake to stop him from coming to the wedding. That's where I'm gonna wrap this one up today. Thank you for making it to the end of the episode. I love your face. And I love that you love listening to my voice as much as I love putting stories out on the internet. I'll catch you in the next episode, and until then, au revoir.